Exactly. Are you a veteran thinking about buying a home or just want to know how to help a veteran close to you? This is the episode for you. Forgot to put my note up there. I told you I'd mess this up. This is a bonus episode, different than we used to do. A bonus episode of Want to Move There. We're going to talk about all the VA home buying myths with one of my favorite veteran realtors down there in Georgia and Florida, Andy Rose. You can see him right there. Say hello to everybody, Andy.
Hello, everybody.
This is Want to Move There. Like I said, this is a bonus episode. Usually we talk to people and give them the information they need to decide whether or not they want to move to a different area. But today we're going to be talking about some home loans, some veteran home loan and home buying myths. And Andy we'll also give him a chance to plug where he is. I'm sweating and whatnot, Andy. This bonus episode got me messed up.
Yeah,
and I told you we're not going to stop this again. But
don't let the Marine facade fool you.
Yeah, you were straight faced, and actually, I was at a military house just before this taking pictures. So this is a bonus episode. This is Want to Move There. We usually talk to people about moving somewhere. Today, we're going to talk about some veteran home buying myths and how-tos and whatnot. I am your host, Derek Bicksler, realtor of 15 years. Reminder to hit us up in the comments or say hello. Oh man, this episode. We're going to leave it. All this in.
Hey,
Hit us up in the comments if you have any questions or just want to say hello. If you're in Central PA, I want to hear from you. And if you're somewhere else around the globe, we definitely want to hear from you. Also, a reminder to check out the replays on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you like to get your content. That's where you can find it. And now I'll shut up after I botched this whole interview for this bonus episode. I can't even say intro. Not the whole interview. I botched the intro for this episode. Now I'll bring in Andy Rose. Andy, tell us the last movie you watched while I bring up your bio.
Oh, God. I can tell you the last series. I mean, we're in the middle of next to last season of Billions, but I can't tell you the last movie I actually watched. Actually, you know what? I lied. Dune. The new Dune movie. I actually watched because they put it out in the theaters and on HBO, and I watched it at home. It took me 2 days to watch. It's something you had to really pay attention to, and I love sci-fi, but I never got into reading it or anything. I just like it on the big screen. But yeah, Dune was really, really good. I can't wait for the next movie for that one as well.
Yeah, I saw that too. It took me a couple sittings as well. I kind of wanted to see it in the theater because I think it was in 3D, maybe.
I don't remember. The last 3D I did was Star Wars, and that was a trip.
Yeah, those are crazy. I love whenever Star Wars comes out, I go to like a noon matinee by myself, like a child, and get candy and popcorn and have like a me time Star Wars fun.
Exactly.
And then what is, what'd you say, Billions? Is that on Netflix or Hulu, or was that on?
No, that's on Showtime. We re-signed up for Showtime temporarily to get it, Billions. We had watched a lot of it, and then I think they were off for a while because of the pandemic and everything and recording it. And now we were two seasons behind, and we're almost done with one season. So we've got, I think this next season might be the final season. But very good show about the stock market and everything. Great actors. It's about money. So what we all are concerned about usually.
Yeah. We're all concerned about it now with gas prices and whatnot, but we won't get into that. Let me bring your bio up here and talk about you a little bit before we get into the VA home buying myths busted. You grew up in Florida and Georgia, where you practice now, so no better person to talk to about that area. Where did you go to school? You went to Georgia South COBB. What does COBB stand for?
Oh, so yeah, I went to South Cobb. COBB. It might have capitalized my shift button sticks, but South Cobb was my high school. Got through that and got into a little bit of trouble and said, you know what, I'm just going to join the Marine Corps. Hanging out with the wrong crowd and said, you know what, this is obviously not going anywhere. Well, so I joined the Marine Corps and found out when I got to boot camp that I wasn't the only one doing that. A lot of people join the Marine Corps to escape some other things. I did that, and then from there I did electronics when I was in ground communication electronics, what we would call crypto. I was a crypto tech, and that's basically what garbles up the messages for the communications and ungarbles them and everything. Now, if I say crypto tech, they think, Bitcoin or something completely different. All that stuff is integrated now. I used to be a government contractor as well, and a lot of it's integrated with the IT network. And I've worked on some of that stuff too before I left the corporate world and got into real estate about 6 years ago. Well,
and so what
years
is
licensed in 6 years actually doing it full time.
Gotcha. And what is South Cobb? What's their mascot? So if anybody from South Cobb is watching,
Well,
go whatever.
War Eagles. So we're in Georgia. We're close enough to Auburn. A lot of people here do it. Auburn is the War Eagles. So we were South Cobb War Eagles when I was there. Now I think they dropped the war and they're just the South Cobb Eagles now, I think.
And then you mentioned you went to the Marine Corps right out of high school, and I can relate to being with the wrong crowd or doing some not so great things in the military. Probably would have been a great move for me as well. I did not do it, but looking back, probably would have been a great move.
I got in trouble in the Marine Corps too, but you can hide it better there.
What happens nobody outside of it finds out, at least, right? They keep everything inside.
Unless you do something really big. But I never did anything really big. It was just being young and dumb like everybody else.
And then your favorite color is blue. I forgot. I was going to change it and make this 90% of people say blue. And I was going to put in the question that you can't say blue. So I'm going to ask you what your favorite second color is, since I am throwing blue out. Nobody's allowed to say that anymore.
Orange. I'm a huge Gator fan, Florida Gators, and our colors are orange and blue. So a lot of my stuff that I wear is blue and orange.
Awesome. I used to like the Florida Gators back in the day. I liked the Fighting Irish and Florida Gators for no reason really, other than they were probably good back in the day.
Yeah, they had a good string. We're about to get back there though.
That's good. And then your favorite food is barbecue. Any special barbecue? Does Georgia have some kind of special their own barbecue?
No, because of the transient nature of Metro Atlanta, there's some small pockets of some local barbecue restaurants, but it's kind of to me, it's a mix of different stuff. But it's like a sweet tomatoey based or tomato and vinegar based barbecue sauce. Most of it is about the wood and the smoke and the seasoning on it, building that bark. I do a little bit I've got a pit boss, a stand-up pit boss, and I'll smoke pork butts. I've done some ribs, really good with wings. I can do some good smoked wings. But yeah, there's some good barbecue in Metro Atlanta. And the dirtier the place, the better, of course.
Of course, and they have to wrap it in just like paper bags and not some high-end bags and whatnot. The best places are the dives. So you have your own. You smoke? Is that a pit boss? Is a smoker?
Yeah, it's a smoker. So I'll slow roast smoke pork butt. I've done prime rib for Christmas for my family and everything. I've done small turkeys. I want to try a duck. I think duck would be nice smoked, but it's a little bit different than smoking, say, a chicken. Even though they may look the same, the fat content around the bird is a little bit different.
Huh. So you have to do some experimenting, or do you YouTube recipes for different animals, or how do you do it?
I would probably YouTube and Google that stuff and find out what's the best practice first, and then go that route. And I've tried a small brisket. Brisket's just really, really difficult, and it's an expensive mistake if you mess it up.
Right, yeah. What's the poundage? That has to be pretty expensive. And then the turkey, does the family like their turkey, or do they like it the traditional way?
No, the turkey's some people either like it fried or they like it smoked. I prefer to like the smoke because to me it keeps it juicier, and you get that smoke flavor. I just enjoy the smoke flavor. But when you fry it, it does lock in the juices really well. You have it's sometimes difficult. You can overcook it really easy.
And does the skin get crispy when you smoke it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's probably the best part.
Huh. And then does it actually taste smoky also?
No, not unless you use some kind of flavoring to, season it in. But you've got to brine it too, which is a whole 24 to 36 hour process of soaking it in a brine, a salt brine. And that can take up a good portion of it. If you don't do that right, you don't infuse the right flavors, it can mess it up as well.
You're making my mouth water. I'm vegetarian or vegan-ish is what I call myself, but I do eat meat from time to time. But when I do, it's got to be really good meat that's made at a dive or something special.
Yeah.
So if I ever come down there, I'll eat some of your meat because that's sounding fantastic. And it says here that you do have pets. So is this a cat pet or a dog pet?
Dog. I'm allergic to cats. Kind of a bad
Same here. What kind of dog? Big dog?
No, I have a little terrier mix. Her name is Sage. She was a rescue that my brother-in-law got, and then him and his wife were so busy with work that the dog was sitting in a crate all day. So we were up there busy one time and said, you know what? Why don't we take the dog? And we've had the dog ever since. And now my brother-in-law, he was in just south of Nashville at that time, and now he's moved back here locally. So whenever he comes over a couple times a week, and the dog gets to see, the person that rescued him.
Nice. And does the dog like barbecue as well?
Yes. She loves human food more than she loves dog food, which is a problem because when I cook good, it's like, I'll give you a little bit, but I can't give you the whole thing.
Dogs are always good. I haven't had a dog for a while, but when I had a dog, it was always good as a vacuum. If you drop anything, what's yours name?
Sage.
Sage. Everything will be gone and licked up in a lickety split. But you do have kids. You have 4. Wow, good for you. I have 3, and I thought that was a lot. So you got 4 kids: 20, 18, 11, and 9. So the 20 and 18 fairly close spread, and then you got a bigger spread there. What happened?
Yeah. So my older 2 kids are actually my stepkids, but I've been married to their mother since they were real little. So they've lived with me all the time, except the 20-year-old's out now. He's got his own work and everything. He actually lives with his father now in their basement, so he's got his freedom there. And then the 18-year-old, she just graduated in December from high school. She's looking to be a rad tech. And then I've got a 6th grader and a 4th grader in middle and elementary school.
Awesome. Well, more power to you. I know how much work it is, so I feel you there. And you're married to Stephanie. Does she go by Stephanie or Steph?
I call her Steph, but most people just call her Stephanie.
Well, hello, Stephanie, out there watching, hopefully. And your hobbies are barbecue smoking, like we talked about, and college football. Do you like other teams outside of down there in Georgia, or is that you stick mainly to Florida and Georgia teams?
Florida, that's it. Or anybody that plays Georgia. So not a Georgia fan. Even though I live in the state, I'm not a Georgia fan at all.
Oh, so you're a Georgia hater specifically.
Specifically, yes.
But you live there. All right, everybody out there that lives in Georgia, you got to give Andy a hard time next time you see him. So would you go to like a Georgia game and wear the other team's T-shirt right in the middle of the crowd?
Oh, I wouldn't go to the game. I couldn't do it. I would get in trouble. I would be talking too much trash, and I wouldn't wear the other teams. I'd wear my stuff. I would wear Florida stuff to a Georgia game if it wasn't the Georgia-Florida game.
Yeah. Well, at least I think Southern people are a little bit more polite, and it might not be as bad for you as if you did it at, say, an Eagles or a Flyers game or somewhere in Philly or something, because those fans would literally probably beat you up.
Yeah, we're polite except for college football. It's considered old-fashioned hate.
I feel you. And then you mentioned that after Marine Corps, you got into corporate life. So tell me again what you did after you got out of the Marine Corps.
I still did telecommunications. I worked for the local phone company, and then I did some government contracting here in the States and overseas. Came back, did some more government contracting until we wanted to have that 4th kid, and my wife was like, you got to get off the road, because I was traveling all over. And I took a job with the fiber optic network company, level 3, that ended up getting bought out by CenturyLink a few years ago after I had left. But yeah, they were a long haul fiber optic company that, we had a huge backbone. At the time, they carried a lot of the major sports networks, video feeds, locally and nationally. And
then what made you want to get out of that?
It was a calling. It was first put in my head, 2002, 2003. I went on a call for a real estate school when I was a phone man, and it was interesting. I looked at it and I was like, oh, it it doesn't cost much to be a real estate agent. It doesn't cost much to go to the school, I should say. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. It was just something that stayed in the back of my head. And when I got to a point, I actually got married. My wife is an underwriter at the VA, and we were talking about it. Go ahead and get your license. And luckily at the time, I had a boss that allowed me to flex my schedule to go to classes and everything. And then eventually it worked out, and I jumped out.
And then did you do it part-time after you got your license and keep your job for a while?
Part-time, and then there was a lull there for a while that I just didn't do anything. And I finally just thought to God one day on the way to work, I said, what am I going to do with this license? I can't stand my job anymore, my corporate job. I was trying to find I really was trying to find a different job and couldn't get any interviews, and led me down a whole different path. My wife got licensed here in Georgia as well. And then, like I said, we were at a point where business was good enough. I needed the flex time for my family and everything, and was able to jump out of the corporate world into full-time real estate.
That's awesome. And then was there an intention from the get-go to niche down or serve veterans in particular? Because now, obviously, being a veteran yourself and you know all about it, which is why you're on here, was the intention to serve veterans and help veterans? Or was it just, I want to get my real estate license, and then you kind of gravitated towards the veteran thing?
I think that was always something that was in the back there. If I was going to have a niche in real estate, that I would be doing more work with veterans. And what I've found myself is, I do quite a bit of work with veterans as far as clients and clientele, but I'll also advising other agents on the VA home loan. Like I said, my wife is an underwriter at the VA, so she knows a lot of the ins and outs. That's where I've learned a lot of my stuff. I've also picked up a lot just in my experiences of handling VA buyers. So it's something that is obviously, being a Marine and a veteran, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's really why I want to help not just veterans properly use their benefit, but also help agents and lenders sometimes understand the VA home loan better.
Yeah, and it's a very timely topic right now, a great thing to talk about right now because of competing offers. And if you look at least the stats in my market, if you looked at, say, 2 out of 200 sales in one county in a month, maybe more than that, 250 or whatever, maybe 5% or any type of government loan. So right now, everybody's looking for a conventional loan or cash, and nobody wants to deal with FHA or USDA or VA. And I think sometimes VA gets lumped in there with those other two unnecessarily in a lot of ways. So that's why I'm having you on here. We're going to talk about that stuff and debunk it a little bit. But we're going to start off here, and this is a question you gave me. What ways a veteran can qualify? And is this, I added the who qualifies. So is that what we're talking about? Who can qualify for a VA loan?
Who qualifies for a VA home loan? Okay, so I think right off the bat, the easiest one is an active duty service member. And as long as they've got at least 90 days in service and they're active duty, they're in for 90 days, they can use the VA home loan. I mean, it's just plain and simple. They're active duty, they can use it. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated when you start talking about actual veterans and people who are no longer in. So generally with veterans, former active duty service members with at least 2 years of honorable service. That's the thing. Some people get out for what we call them big chicken dinners, bad conduct discharges, or a general discharge for administrative reasons. And sometimes those administrative reasons are because of behavior. So you got to have 2 years of honorable service. There's an exception for those that are discharged prior to 1980. That's where you want to call the VA and go, hey, am I qualified? Generally, yes, but that's where things are. They make changes every so often. So different veterans of different eras may have a little bit different qualifications, especially prior to 1980, because before that you had a lot of the Vietnam guys, and they weren't going to be in for 2 years, right? They were going to be in for a 6-month tour, 1 month tour, and that may be all that they need. Then there's also those that are discharged for disability. So if they got hurt and it was under 2 years, as long as they're in receipt of disability from the VA, then they still qualify. And then parenthood, actually, it's something that's interesting, but a lot of the female service members, they'll get pregnant. They're usually a lot of times they're with another active duty service member as their spouse, and they'll get pregnant. She decides to get out, and in some of those cases, they're allowed just to get out to take care of the kids. So there's.
But that would that kind of discharge would disqualify them, or they'd still be eligible.
No, they'd still be qualified. In general, now there's specifics there that you have to call and ask on. Not every situation is exactly the same when it comes to a discharge, but those are the general highlights of being able to use the VA home loan benefit after you're out of the military.
Gotcha. So, go ahead.
I was going to jump into the next ones are the Reserve and National Guard. Reserve and National Guard are generally the same. The Reserves are a little bit different than the National Guard in how their structure is, state versus federal, and different branches of that. But in general, National Guard and Reserves, they have to have active drilling for at least 6 years with an honorable discharge. And this is the key. Active drilling for 6 years. So their terms are for 6 years. And if they're not going to drill every month, 2 weeks out of the year, then they lose those points on their what's called a point statement. And that's how they calculate this. Did they drill enough? Did they acquire enough points to get it? So generally going for your full 6 years, not missing out, on any drill or making up your drill, then you're allowable. Or you can have 60 days of what's called Title 10 deployment, basically wartime deployment. Okay, and then from there's also a more recent change. The National Guard that was deployed for COVID support. Some of those folks this is the one where you're going to want to call in and find out that those are ones that are also allowed to get those. And that change has been made, obviously, in the last 2 years. And I think that's Title 32. So under Title 32, which was the order that allowed them to be used for COVID support, if they were there long enough, and I think it is 60 days for those guys too, that they would be able to use the VA home loan benefit.
Gotcha. And then are there any others? That's all of them, right?
That's generally it. There's just 3 main things, and that's it. I mean,
so you got active duty. If you're active duty, you qualify obviously while you're active duty, and then once you're a veteran, if you had at least 2 years of active duty, or you were discharged for one of those reasons you said is okay to be discharged and still get your benefits, or if you were reserves or National Guard, but because they don't put in as much time as the active duty people do, they want you to be in it longer, the 6 years rather than 2, to build up the time, unless you're active, in war times for 60 days, or like you said, for some other deployment here for some other emergency or something. Is the reserves, is that kind of like by state? Because isn't there like the Pennsylvania reserves and the different state by state? Is that why it can vary?
If I remember correctly, because it's been a while, I got out in 1998. But like you have Army National Guard, which is directed by the state, but there is a federal connection as well. They can be called up federally as well. Same thing with Air Force National Guard. Okay, the Navy and the Marines do not have a National Guard. They just have reserves. Army has reserves. Air Force has reserves. They're not as big. They mostly go to the National Guard on that side. The Navy and the Marines, they just have reserves. There's no National Guard segment of them. So that's really, really important for those guys. And it gets down to some of the same things. The reserves weren't called up for Title 32 to help with the last 2 years. But the reserves were called up for Title 10 when it came to wartime service. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you were deployed overseas, that your unit was called up maybe in support here in the States as well.
And the National Guard, is this correct? The National Guard is for domestic use, and then the reserves could be used for domestic, abroad, whatever they feel like using them for?
Reserves is just for... I would imagine if the emergency was large enough, but generally reserves are just on the federal level.
Gotcha. Okay. And then let's talk about some of the myths here. The first one I have here is the VA process takes way too long and has too much government red tape, which is why all the offers with VA always get thrown out. But it's not always the case. So let's bust this myth a little bit.
I know lenders that can close a VA home loan in 3 weeks, sometimes less. So it doesn't take longer. Okay, most of your closings are done in 30 days, sometimes less, sometimes a little more if there's a particular issue or whatnot, but generally 30 days. VA home loans can be done in 30 days. There is no extra red tape. There is none. Actually, there's less guidelines for a VA than there is for an FHA, USDA, and maybe even a conventional. The conventional loan last year, fourth quarter, the conventional loan and the VA loan had a closing rate of 80.3 and 80. So there's a 0.3 difference between the closing rate of those two loan types. Where you have FHA was I think 74, 75. So it says no, they still close. They still close just as much as the conventional.
Yeah, and VA loans are fantastic. I mean, if you're a veteran, you would recommend using a VA loan over another product, even if they could use another product, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I've talked about this before, where it was suggested by a friend that, hey, get them qualified for both a conventional and the VA, and show the seller and the listing agent that, hey, they're highly qualified. Just because they're not putting any money down doesn't mean that they don't have the means to do so. They've just earned the right by serving their country not to have to put that money down. But the VA, the government, through the VA, is guaranteeing the loan with the lender. And a lot of times that means they also have those extra funds to go towards things like covering appraisal gaps, especially in this market. Any kind of repairs, they can pay for the repairs if they can't get the repairs waived. So they can also pay for the repairs and not come out of pocket for the sellers where they're stuck with a conventional. Hey, you're short on a conventional and you still got to cover the appraisal gap. You're still coming out of pocket possibly more money.
Yeah, and it can help a lot of the buyers get into a house, because a lot of the people that don't have a lot of cash to put into something, where they're out there looking out in the country trying to find a USDA property that they can get 100% financing on,
right.
Whereas a veteran can go get a 100% loan anywhere they want to, not in a specific area.
Yeah, let's talk about those two differences. We do some of those up here in Northwest Georgia, where I cover Metro Atlanta, Northwest Georgia. There's further away you get away from Atlanta, you get into USDA territory. They have to be underwritten by the USDA. That's generally, depending on time of year and holidays and all that stuff, it could be an extra 2 or 3 weeks on a USDA loan from my experience. On a VA, the VA doesn't underwrite them. Now, there are a couple of specific ways that the VA will underwrite the loan, but it's very, very specific. I'm trying to rack my brain thinking of exactly what it is, but I want to say it's where you have a vet, non-vet that are both on the loan together, and they're unmarried. So when you have this, and you have those situations, I believe the VA has to underwrite that. It's usually a pretty quick process because the lender has done the bulk of the stuff. They just want to make sure the numbers are correct, that they're only guaranteeing half of that loan because the other half is actually being done through a different purchaser, to a different buyer. So it's almost like you're mixing the VA and a conventional together.
Okay. Yeah. And then I'm looking down through my questions, and I don't have anything about an appraisal in any of these other questions. So I want to stick it in under this question. So what about an appraisal? We're all thinking, well, they're doing these inspections and they're looking for habitability issues and they're going to flag all these things and then we're not going to be able to proceed. So what's the myth there? Are they flagging lots of stuff when they look at properties?
I mean, as much as an appraisal is objective numbers wise, or at least that's what we like to say and we like to think, the other stuff necessarily isn't. As long as it's sanitary, safe, and secure, you're usually good with the appraisal inspection. Okay. If you walk in and it feels like you're going to fall through the floor, well, there could be an issue. They may flag that as a structural issue to have like an engineer letter or something to make sure that the house isn't going to fall in. but that's the rare case. And in a lot of cases, if you work with the underwriter and the right lender, you can actually have the veteran waive those repairs. They have to request it to waive the repairs. If they will waive them, then the veteran can pay for some of those repairs, a lot of those repairs. And that actually helps out, especially when you're not having to put extra money down because you're 100% loan. You've got no down payment. The other thing with the appraisals, there's a big stigma out there about VA home loans coming in low, the appraisals coming in low. And I have to say that it's unique only because you have two opportunities to fight the appraisal. One is prior to the appraisal being completed, the appraiser is going to call for what they call Tidewater. He's going to call for Tidewater. You have 72 hours from that point to give him your comps. And usually the lender and the agents kind of put their head together, but send them comps, put it on a sheet and see if they will take care of, if they will consider your comps and your adjustments on those comps. Depending on the area, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If you can't win there, and the appraiser goes ahead and submits the appraisal into the VA appraisal department, then you can go directly to the appraisal department and ask for a reconsideration of value. And then you have you have a better way there because you can actually talk to an individual who is in the appraisal department and say, hey, look, here's the situation, here's all the comps, all of this stuff, and fight for it that way. So you have two opportunities where an FHA, and here's the other kicker. The appraisal stays with the veteran. Because of how the order is done for an appraisal through the VA system, comes in through the veteran's name, is given a case number, and underneath that case number is put the address. So if that falls through, that case number goes away, which means the address goes away. So the appraisal doesn't stay in the system, not like FHA at all.
So that was going to be one of my questions that I wrote down here. Does it stick with the house? So it doesn't. No. It's with the veteran.
It sticks with the veteran. So that means that if you're in if you're in a military town, okay, and you get one that comes in really low, that buyer backs out because the seller doesn't want to adjust. Another veteran can come in, even with the same lender, because they order it through the system using the social security number, the case number, and then the address. It's all underneath that, so they don't see it. Now you may get the same appraiser, because, like I think almost everywhere across the nation, we're low on appraisers. We're low on inventory for houses, and we're low on appraisers. And the VA vets their local appraisers, and there's usually only a handful for the area, or each different little area. There's only a few. They vet them. These are very experienced appraisers, from my understanding. Most of them have several years, if not 10, 20 years in the business. So it's not like FHA where you can just go get qualified or certified to do FHA, and you could have just been in the business a few years.
Huh. So and then what about like shipping, paint, railings, that kind of stuff? You said you can get that disregarded, or the veteran can fix it. Are they flagging that kind of stuff?
I've never seen shipping paint. I've heard of it, but I think that's something you should be able to get waived. Now, railings, if it's for safety, right? The railings usually with local codes and all that. There has to be a certain amount of railing or a certain height when it's above a certain height above the ground. I've actually had that situation, and the veteran paid for it. My seller, I was on the selling side, and a Marine was buying it, and he's like, "I'll just take care of it. I'll put something up, just cheap and quick." And the appraiser said, "All right," and that was it. And then after they closed, they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna tear it down and actually put up something nicer and more permanent where they were at." But the veteran was allowed to pay for it.
And then what about like if a furnace doesn't work at all?
Yeah, so your mechanicals are going to have to work. Your water heater, and here's a crazy one. If there's a spot for a dishwasher, the dishwasher needs to be there, right? If there's a spot for a stove, the appliances need to be there. What
about a fridge?
Yeah, a fridge. I mean, you've got to have a place to store food, right? You're going to live there. You know, you've got to be able to cook. You've got to be able to clean. You've got to be able to store it. So, and that usually comes up with new construction where the appraiser will come out and be like, hey, where's the stuff? I'm like, hey, well, we're delayed on deliveries, blah, blah, blah. It's coming in a couple of days. And he's like, all right, well, let me know when it's back. I'll swing back by and look at it. And that's essentially it.
And then you mentioned that sometimes they restrict what a veteran buyer can pay for, and you said they can pay for some of those repairs. Are they now allowed to pay for the wood insect? That was something I always overlooked, and every time I did a deal, I forgot that the seller had to pay for the wood insect inspection. Is that still a thing?
No, it's not. It's like for 6 or 7 years, maybe. Yeah, 7 years. The seller can pay for the termite letter. The seller can pay for it, as long as it's under the 1% rule.
Or the buyer, you mean?
Or I'm sorry, the buyer can pay for it. Now, with our contracts, we have exhibits here for VA home loan contracts that state that the seller has to pay for that, and we tried to fight it and say pull that out, and I don't know. Our contracts here state that the seller has to pay for it because they refuse to update their knowledge on the guidelines. In Florida, you don't see that. So the buyer can pay for it. And here's the thing, I bought a house, the second house I ever bought several years ago. Heck, it's been probably 11 years now, but I had a home inspection done. The home inspection company had a partnership with the termite company. So the termite was included, and you didn't see it on the sheet, right? You didn't see it on any kind of breakdown because they just had a partnership with the company. And the underwriter came back and said, hey, you got this termite letter, who paid for it? I was like, the inspection company. Well, who paid for the inspection? Well, I did. Well, you're not allowed to do that. And then we had to pull up the letter and say, actually, I them. This is not a big deal. Oh, by the way, it's included in that fee. I would have paid the inspection anyways. If I didn't get the termite inspection, I still would have paid the same fee. So there was no extra cost to it.
None of it doesn't make any sense, really. Yeah. I mean, and it's only like $100 or whatever it is. It's not like it's some crazy amount that. I've
got one here. As long as it's a clean letter, it's $50 for the letter. That's it. I mean, if there's issues with it or whatnot, it's going to cost more for treatment and repairs and all that. But the veteran can pay for that as well.
And then my second one here is VA loans have additional costs. So that could maybe be seen as an additional cost if you had to pay for it, but you can elect not to do it. So do you have to do the wood insect thing?
You have to have a clear letter. You do have to have a clear letter. And
so you cannot waive that inspection?
No, you cannot waive that one. That one has to be good. And FHA doesn't have that. I know that's the one thing that is different between that and FHA and even conventional. But, being here in the South and, with the hot, humid temperatures we generally have, we don't get too cold. Usually it's not a matter of if you get termites, it's when you get termites. And, it's always good to have treatment anyway. So that, even afterwards, it's like, hey, go ahead and keep the treatment plan going, on the seller, especially the veteran seller, keep the treatment plan going. And that way, when you switch it over, it's easier to get a letter.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about other costs? Are there like additional funding fees like they have with VA, FHA, that kind of thing?
The VA funding fee is there. There's an initial funding fee amount, and then it goes up a little bit once you do your subsequent loans after that. Any amount of loans after that. It just goes up that one time. The funding fee is basically, you can consider it the same thing as PMI, right? But it's going to be generally cheaper. It can be rolled into the back of the loan, okay? So it's no extra cost out of pocket. They can pay it if they want up front, but it can be rolled in the back of the loan. That's generally what happens. Here's the kicker though. If you're a veteran and you have 10% or more disabled, so you're a disabled veteran, there's nothing less than 10% that I've ever seen. So if you're a disabled veteran, you can waive the funding fee. So it goes away. So and this is how the funding fee is essentially how the VA gets some of their money. It's not all in the budget from taxes and everything. They make money off of that funding fee. I can't say they make money. That's what they use to kind of guarantee the loan. That's the portion of it. And
is it like 1% or is it some set amount?
To be honest with you, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. I think the initial one is like 1.5, 1.7, and I think the subsequent maybe closer to 2% of the
Gotcha.
loan.
And then it's rolled into the loan. So is there mortgage insurance? There's not mortgage insurance with VA, right?
Well, that's what that is. You can consider that like mortgage insurance, like the PMI, MIP. It's the same thing.
But then it's probably, if you broke it down to monthly costs, I would guess that funding fee would break down to be less monthly than the mortgage insurance would be.
It's not like FHA where you have an upfront mortgage insurance fee, and then you have a monthly fee included as part of your payment. VA doesn't have that. You just have the funding fee up front if you're not a disabled veteran, and that's it.
So you actually have less costs than some of the other.
You have less cost, and they also limit what you can be charged for in the closing costs too. So they have the 1% rule, but they have a whole list of items that a veteran buyer cannot pay for. Basically, it stops lenders from overcharging on a lot of items that you see them charging for on conventional loans and on FHA loans.
Do they keep like lender fees, like charging points and things like that? Is that against policy?
That stuff. You know what? When we're in a buyer's market, the seller can pay down debt and other items for the veteran. So if they need a credit card paid off, then they can pay off a credit card for the buyer. We're not in that market at all, but
no, we're not. But that's pretty awesome.
It is allowable, and it does happen.
And then what about seller help? Are you allowed to get seller help with a VA loan?
Yeah. They can help pay closing costs. Again, we're not in that market, but before 2 years ago, we were. I know here in Metro Atlanta, we were getting about half of the closing costs paid for on most deals. At least the deals that I did, we were able to negotiate half. Sometimes we were able to get all of it covered. But yeah, the seller can contribute towards the.
Is it a 6% cap or somewhere 3 or 6? Most of the loans seem to be 3% or 6%.
I want to say it is a 6% cap.
Yeah, which is more than conventional. Typically, you're going up to like 3.
Yeah,
FHA, you can go up to 6, but
that's something that we really rarely see. That's why that's not a number that's on the top of my head, because it's something we just rarely see.
Yeah, these days you're not seeing it for sure.
No.
I just asked for some seller help on a house I made an offer on, but I'm trading my commission for said seller help, so it's a wash. But
there you go. That's something that we can do.
Exactly, the beauty of being us. And then what about interest rates? Are they generally way higher? Or are they way lower? What are the interest rates like?
Just the opposite. So veteran VA home loans generally have a lower foreclosure rate than conventional and FHA, right? So that means we tend to be a hair, maybe quarter point lower. It just depends, but we tend to be lower. Just that, and that's where you hear the things about they're 100% loan. They don't have enough skin in the game. They're not this. They're not that. They're not highly qualified. That's why they're doing 100% loan. And it's furthest from the truth, because most veterans are very responsible people. It's kind of instilled in us in the military to be responsible, to be dutiful and stuff like that. And that's generally
and diligent. And they're the only ones that read every word of the contract. And they've got their own spreadsheets and lists. And you can actually read their handwriting because they print in nice block letters perfectly, all spaced exactly the same. Yeah, I would venture to guess they're some of the highest qualified and best clients to work with.
Yeah. So, when an underwriter is qualifying a VA home loan versus, say, an FHA or a conventional, you always hear debt to income ratio. What's the DTI, right? I've heard of VA home loans being closed in the 60s and 70s on DTI, which is extremely high. Usually they want to keep it around mid 40s, mid 50s for an FHA or something like that, depending on the lender and the situation, because they're not written as a DTI. Now they'll look at that stuff, but they go off of what is the residual income. Do they have enough money to live after that? And that's really where it gets into saying, hey, look, yeah, they got a high DTI, but they make good money. Their credit's great. They've been responsible with all their debt. they've got enough money after their house payment to live on, so they are qualified. They don't look at, it's not a qualifying factor for DTI. Same thing with credit score. The VA sets no limit on credit score.
Huh.
It's up to the lender.
What would, I mean, in the fives would probably, I would guess, about as low as a lot would go, maybe, right?
I've seen 580s. I've seen lenders say, no, I can do 580s. And I helped one that had a really low. He was young and dumb, and stuff hadn't fallen off his credit yet. And we had to go through some fiery hoops to get him a home, but we were able to do so, even though he had a low credit score. His DTI was crazy, but he was still able to get the loan because he was a veteran.
And then you talked about being able to afford a loan long term, which made me think of something. If you're in the military for just those 2-year minimum, are you getting some kind of retirement or pension benefits or health insurance or any kind of stuff beyond that? Or do you have to work in the military for 20, 30 years or whatever?
Not unless you're not getting any kind of full retirement, and unless you come out with some kind of major disability or any kind of disability, you'll get disability income. But your only time you're going to get retirement is if you actually do your full 20 years.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And what about, and military employees who were never veterans, there's no special loan for those people, correct?
No, my wife actually got a call on that yesterday. I think it was yesterday. A lady called in and said, hey, my husband's worked for the government for like 20 years at the base doing civil service and blah, blah, blah. You know, does he qualify for a VA home loan? She's like, did he serve in the service? Was he actually in the military? She's like, no. He's like, not going to happen. So,
what about family members? Are there benefits for family members of veterans?
Yes. If you are a spouse that is in receipt of DIC. So DIC stands for death, indemnification, and something else. I can't remember what the C stands for. But if they're in receipt of DIC, then they can use that. Usually means that they were killed in action, or they were missing in action, or they passed away after they came back due to something that happened while they were in, like Agent Orange from the Vietnam era. A lot of that stuff happened later, and when they come back and prove that it was from that, then they can use the VA home loan benefit that their spouse earned and sacrificed.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. And then so the rates are pretty good, comparable with anything else, sometimes even better. And then who can use a VA loan? Can you use it more than once? I know I've had veteran clients buy multiple houses, just sold one to somebody. So tell us a little bit about that. And can you have more than one loan out simultaneously?
Yeah, so they have what's called full entitlement, which full entitlement is there's no limit from the VA. The limit is what the lender will qualify you for. So there's no limit on your full entitlement. If you do have a home purchase under the VA home loan, and say 2 years later you have to move for work or something and you want to keep that home, you can use what's called bonus entitlement. Now, bonus entitlement does have a limit, and it is based off of a calculation from the conforming loan limit. So if you're over I think it's 650 something now for conforming loans. If you're over that on your full entitlement loan, then there is no bonus entitlement. But if you're under that, then there is a calculation that says how much you can. Here's the thing: is that if you buy, let's say, a $500,000 house, you want to keep it and move into another one 2 years later for work or whatnot, or you need to upgrade or downsize or whatnot. You want to keep the old house. You can use your entitlement that's left over, but if you go over that limit, then you only have to pay 25% of that overage. So there is an extra use to that, having that little bit, and you can go over that bonus entitlement amount, but you'll have to put a little bit of a down payment on there, and it's a whole lot. Usually, that 25% of the difference is less than putting down 20% of 10 or 20% of the whole amount. You know. So
that makes sense.
It does behoove you to use it. And there's veterans out there, or active duty folks that have been in for 20 years, and they've bounced around and they've kept a house in each location, and they've built themselves real estate wealth because they were able to use their VA home loan benefit to purchase multiple homes using that and moving within the guidelines and the military, and being able to, if you're in a military town, those houses are going to rent, and you're generally going to rent to somebody in the military. So the house is going to be generally taken care of and everything. And then eventually, you can roll those out of the VA into a conventional or large portfolio loan, put them all together or something into the same trust or whatnot once they get out and they build all that. I think that's kind of a hidden thing. When I was in, they didn't talk about that at all. They didn't talk about going to just use your VA home loan benefit to start building wealth. I mean, I would have loved to have bought a house when I was in California, Southern California when I was in, because right now that thing is probably worth $1 million or plus. So,
yeah, those are the people moving out of there, driving up the prices here in Pennsylvania, paying cash and way over asking price for everything because they could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so it sounds like the entitlement and what you can buy is more, it's not based on number of properties you can have, but the value of all those properties.
Yeah, the value, your purchase price of it. So that's what it gets.
Gotcha. And then can you buy multi-units?
Yes, you can buy multi-units. So generally we think of a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, but you can buy a 5-unit, and that 5th unit has to be a business. So you can have 4 rental spots for residential. You have to live in one, so you rent out 3, and then you have a commercial business in the other.
Well, that's awesome. That's something you can't do with other loans. If you want to get a residential loan, basically to reside in something, it's 4 or less, and you can't have any commercial spaces in it. I would love, just for that, I would like to be a veteran to be able to buy a 5-unit with a commercial space. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. If you can find them, they are difficult to find, but it is definitely possible. There's certain metropolitan areas that have stuff like that. I don't generally see them in where I'm at in Georgia and Florida.
So is that just with a 5-unit? One of the units has to be a commercial, or could you have a 2-unit with 1 commercial?
No. Well,
or does it depend on the lender, maybe?
No, I think I'd have to check on that, but I do know that you can have multiple units, up to 5, and that fifth unit has to be a commercial business.
So theoretically, you could buy a 5-unit, 4 residential, 1 commercial, live in it, then move to another area, buy another 5-unit, live in it, 1 commercial, then go until you've maxed out your entitlement amount. Am I understanding that correctly?
Your entitlement amount goes up. So, and this is true. This is actually true for FHA as well, unless they've made some changes recently. But if you buy a multiplex unit up to 4, your loan limit goes up because they understand that the other units are going to be rented out based off of what their rental numbers, rental potential could be, and that loan limit, your loan limit goes up on those.
Based on your debt to income. So maybe your debt to income only affords you a $100,000 house, but if you bought a 5-unit, you only have to qualify to pay for the 1 unit that you're not technically paying for yourself. Am I following that?
So one, it's not debt to income. Okay. So the biggest thing is that you have to live in one of the units, no matter if it's a duplex, triplex, or quad. You have to live in one of the units, and the income from the other one makes up the difference. Basically, you
don't have to qualify to cover the whole property.
Right. It helps you qualify for a larger amount because of the rental income.
Yeah.
And that'll be residual income as well, which is a better part of the VA home loan underwriting.
I love that. I would love to, all these little towns, we've got all these little coal towns around and the little downtowns that have the storefront with 3-4 units above it. That'd be an awesome thing for a veteran to buy something like that.
I wish we had that here because I'd be all
especially if they were a self-employed person like yourself. You could buy a 5-unit. I guess you don't want to live in an apartment, but you could have your office in one of them.
Exactly. No, I could have a satellite real estate office from my brokerage, and I could live in one and rent out the others.
And then any other limits to what you can buy? So you can get a single family up to pretty much whatever, jumbo loan type of prices. And then you can buy multi-units up to 5 units, one commercial. Can you buy mobile homes or any other kind of strange things like that?
You can buy a mobile home, modular home / trailer, depending on where you're at and what you want to call it, but it has to be permanently affixed to the ground. So mobile home basically is no longer mobile, so it no longer is a vehicle. It is permanently affixed to the ground, and those are allowable.
And then what about a construction loan? Can you build a house with a VA loan?
Yes, but a lot of lenders, because of the guidelines on that, it's a little bit more difficult to deal with. So there's a lot of lenders that aren't doing them. There for a while, no lender was doing them, and I think there's a few out there that are now that I've heard about. But generally, it's a little bit difficult because how they want you to handle the funding and everything, and closing one time and all that stuff. So, it can be difficult, but there's different ways of doing it as well.
Gotcha. And you kind of a good segue into our last final tip here, warning signs of a bad lender, or we could also phrase this maybe how to choose a good VA lender. So tell everybody what they should look for when choosing a lender, because it does sound like although there are VA guidelines, it can vary a lot from lender to lender. So what you're going to get can vary a lot.
I generally say 90% of the VA home loan problems happen with the lender. Either the loan officer doesn't know, the underwriter doesn't know, they're not following the guidelines. They've got extra overlays on there, whether they're overlays that they should have on there or allowed to have on there. Some of the lenders are going to put FHA guidelines on top of the VA for some reason because they think that, it's a government loan, it's the same thing. Like the appraisal thing, right? Where the appraisal sticks on an FHA and the VA it doesn't. I've heard that so many times. I would say this: a couple of general things is if they shy you away from using your benefit just because they don't understand it, then I would find a different lender.
Is there any kind of certification, like VA certification, like us realtors have all kinds of first home buyer certification and all these kinds of things? Is that something you could look for?
There's some groups out there that do work with lenders. They're other loan officers, and they've built a kind of a club and a business model to say, hey, I'm certified to do these things, and they educate themselves on the VA home loan benefit. I'm speaking at one here locally in next month, so that's something. And they're working on a certification, a CE certification for lenders as well, and everything. So not lenders, I'm sorry, with agents as well. That's why I'm speaking there, so that we can start that process of getting agents more involved in some of this information and having this knowledge, so that the agents at least know what lender to use or actually recommend for their veteran buyers.
Right, because I've worked with some lenders that they don't know anything about the VA loan. They wouldn't know that you could fight an appraisal or do any of those. What'd you call it? What was the term you used for it? The Tidewater?
Oh, Tidewater, yes. Yeah.
That was a phrase I had never heard until I was on Clubhouse listening to you guys talk about appraisal stuff. So you definitely want to have the correct lender that knows what they're doing and is not just picking it because you're a lender or because you're a veteran as default, but actually knows what they're doing.
I'll be careful with how I say this. Large banks, the large banking institutions, not mortgage lenders per se, but banking institutions are usually going to have a problem doing VA home loans. I've experienced it personally myself. I was a member, within years, have been with Bank of America and wanted to use a bonus entitlement, and they didn't understand it at all. So we said, we're going to find somebody. And this is around the time that I was getting involved with real estate in the first place. So I was like, okay, we're going to find somebody else. And we found somebody that knew VA home loans very well, which was a great experience. If the mortgage company has anything like veteran in the name or a service in the name, it doesn't necessarily make them the best option for a VA home loan. Do they service a lot of veteran home loans? Absolutely, because of name only. But I've experienced more problem with those guys, those types of lenders, than I have with my buddy Mike down the street, or my buddy Mike in Texas who does tons of them. And I've got several different lenders, and every single one of them can do VA home loans. They can do the other types too, but every single one of them can do VA home loans. And that's because I'm a veteran and I want to work with those that understand that home loan process.
Is there like a go-to question or like a couple questions that could help you vet a lender?
I would say if they ask you to get your COE, so that we talked about who is eligible to use it, right? And the people that are in for 90 days or more in active duty, been discharged with honorable discharge for 2 years or more, you get the certificate of eligibility, right? And that has some numbers on it that the lender's going to know, especially if you need to use bonus entitlement and subsequent use as well. So that information will be on there. It'll have the disability information on there. So if you're disabled, you don't have to pay the funding fee and whatnot. But the lender needs that. And the absolute easiest way to get that document is for the lender to get it. Now, you may have to provide them your DD-214. You may have to provide them with your discharge papers and your point statements from Reserve and National Guard. But as long as they have that information, they can go into the portal that the VA affords them to go into, and they can get it. If they say, hey, we're having a problem, we can't get it, or they say, hey, no, you need to go on e-benefits and get it. E-benefits is a government website that's for the military, active duty, and veterans, and it's a government website. It doesn't work that well. Some veterans are able to pull down, or some active duty, I think it's mostly active duty, some of them are able to pull down their COE from there. But for the most part, a large majority of the part, it is the lender that should be getting this. If they ask you, say, hey, we can't do anything until you get your COE. Now, I will say this, if it's an older veteran from, 80s, 70s, that era, you may have to go to National Archives to get your DD-214 because a lot of times, those things get lost over the years and decades. That's an extra process. The VA doesn't hold those generally. So they have to go to National Archives to get, and they actually have it on microfiche. Showing my age here, if you remember microfiche, they pull it off of microfiche and they print it out and they will mail it to you. And of course, right now, with everything going on in the past 2 years, it's really slow. It's really, really slow. So it's pain in the butt. But that's the only way I can say, hey, if they can't get it for you, then there's something wrong with your paperwork. They haven't uploaded the paperwork because I've heard about it. They uploaded the paperwork all in one PDF to just one general file in the system where there's a specific spot for all of these different items, and they don't put them there. And they don't, a lot of times the people at the VA, they don't look because they're not asked to look or told to look in those other files.
Yeah. And I've actually had this not too long ago. I had this issue where they asked me for my client to go get their entitlement certificate, whatever. And I was thinking, isn't that something you can check? Or just like if it's a condo, or they're asking me, is this condo approved for VA or FHA or whatever? You have the portal. That's why I'm picking you as the lender. So you go check it. I'm not going to provide that information.
No, that's another one. I've had lenders, big military named lenders, tell a client that, hey, you can't buy a condo. VA doesn't allow condos. That's bull. Now, they have some requirements, and they're different than FHA requirements. They're different than conventional requirements because you have warrantable and non-warrantable condos out there. I deal with a lot of those in Florida because of short-term rentals and everything. But VA does allow condos. It has to be vetted by the VA. If it has a history of being vetted, usually it's a pretty simple process. If it's never been vetted, then there's some paperwork to fill out that the community association has to fill out. And then the VA says, hey, yes or no. And that's it. They have approved. And that's the thing. You go on the VA website, all this information we talked about is there. Not always easy to read or interpret, but the easy one is definitely the condo list. There is a condo list online, and it tells you plain as day as if it's there or not. If it's on the list, it's there. If it's not, it's not. So, but
Yeah,
that
and
doesn't
even
mean
conventional
it's
is looking out for those things too now with the things that
right.
happened with in Florida and with condos and the crash, even they got scared. So now even conventional are asking, they want these questionnaires filled out and they don't want a certain percentage to be rentals, yada yada, or owned by one entity and whatever. So
I had this
even if
situation at the beginning of the year where I had a buyer, a conventional buyer, was only putting 10% down, and because of the new guidelines that started at the beginning of this year, Fannie and Freddie reviewed that condo and the condo docs, and the condo, they just fired the management company. So the condominium association president filled out the paperwork, transposed a bunch of numbers, which meant the Fannie and Freddie went back and the underwriters went back and looked deeper into what's going on because there was a lot of turnover there. Went back and looked deeper what's going on and determined it was now a non-warrantable condo. So my client lost her deal. It was insane. She's like, I can't put down more than 20% right now. I don't have it. I can put down 10%. And those non-warrantables, they want you to have usually more than 20% down.
right.
It's very,
And then
very,
do VA loans get sold at all, or do those usually stay in house? Do they sell them?
no, they get sold quite often. At that point, it's no different than another loan. But it's generally good paper, right? Where an FHA may not be as good paper. Conventional is good paper. So yeah, they do get sold off.
And then any other tips you want to give to everybody before we close it out here?
Um, you know what? Give veterans an opportunity to purchase a home. I know, we see multiple offers all the time on homes, and I would say give them the opportunity if they're with a good lender, and have the listing agent talk to the lender. Make sure they know what they're talking about. To give them the opportunity, at least put them on the short list and vet that lender, because that's really where it's at. And I think that would help out with some of the stigma that the VA home loan has when it comes to this stuff. Because yeah, I get it, cash is king. You can't argue with cash, but if you're going to choose a conventional over a VA and you're still going to have an appraisal issue, it's better to be on the side of the VA than it is on the side of the conventional, because you have ways to fight that stuff, and it's 100% loan, so it's better. If they've got, here's my thing when it comes to the appraisals. If you've got $100,000, right, conventional versus VA. You have $100,000. The conventional still has to put down, let's say 10%, right? But they went over to 120,000 on the contract price. Okay, so now they're going to have to pay $30,000. Well, if it appraises low and they want to cover it even more, say it appraises at 90, they still have to cover that difference, right? Whereas on the VA side, it's still 100%, and they're going to have to cover less difference because there's no down payment. That extra down payment is extra money out of the pocket of the conventional buyer. On the VA side, even if they have to adjust the price and come more out of pocket, they will have it because they're not having to put money down. It's 100%.
Yeah, I mean, cash against a loan, cash is going to usually win, but loan against loan, I put VA up there with conventional at least. I put FHA and USDA a little bit below those two, but VA and conventional, I personally look at as pretty much equal, no matter what percentage the buyer is putting down. And like you said, if it's 100% loan, then they probably have cash to cover an appraisal gap if they need to.
Right, exactly. And I would just say, they've earned the right, veterans have earned the right for at least that consideration. Not just throw them off, oh, it's a government loan, I don't know. That's when I really get upset, because I'm like, you're not educated, and I want to educate the agent in the process. And some agents will listen, some agents won't. Some agents can't tell the buyer, can't tell the seller, can't explain this information well, which to me says we're not doing our jobs to get the information out. And something like this, thanks for bringing me on to explain all this stuff, and I do. This goes out to any veteran. This goes out to any agent. Feel free. My number's right there at the bottom. Feel free. Call me, text me, email me with your questions. I'll get you the answer. And it's as simple as that. I want you to have the right information versus hearing, Joe Schmuckatelli at the VFW tell you how their situation went down with, Veterans United, or, this happened over here. I want the right information, because every situation is different. Every loan's different. Every deal's different. But give the veteran the opportunity.
Awesome. And is there a good place to go before I ask you? We need to close it out because we're going long here. But is there a good place to go? VA.gov. Is that a good place to go to get information?
No, the lender's handbook is right there for everybody to read. The VA lender's handbook is right there on VA.gov for everybody to read. And it's funny because there's lenders I'll talk to that doesn't sound like they've read it ever.
That sounds about right. Yeah. So you could, if you don't trust your lender and they're telling you something you don't think is right, you could go to VA.gov and look it up yourself and say, hey, no, it's right here. This is what I can contest this appraisal, or we can fight this, or whatever the case may be.
And I'll say to veterans and lenders and agents, you can call your regional loan center. There's several of them across the United States. They will answer your questions. But be nice to them, because I've heard it with my wife answering her phone, because she works from home as well. And she's been cussed out by a few veterans, and it's hard for me to hold my tongue sometimes.
In our job, you just got to eat the crap. We just eat crap sometimes. You just eat it and smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So now we'll end it out with a question that has nothing to do with VA loans or real estate or anything, but does have to do with you. So if you could do anything else, if you could be anything else for a living, what would you be?
I'd be an astronomer. I mean, I wasn't good in school, but I loved astronomy growing up. I loved constellations, stars, and all that stuff. When I was a kid, what was I? 9, 10 or so, I got to see Halley's Comet. And when I was in the Marines, I was out in the middle of the desert in 29 Palms. Through NVGs, I got to see Hale-Bopp, the comet that came through in the 96, 97. I got
That's
to
cool.
see Hale-Bopp through NVGs, and that was really, really cool. Because out there in the desert, there's not a lot of light, obviously, so you see a ton of stars. You could see it plain as day, but having NVGs on to see that thing was really cool to see. So
that's awesome. Do you have a telescope?
No, I don't. I need to get one. I'm in an area right now that's just too bright, I don't know how well. I'd probably have to get a pretty good one to see anything, but I'm constantly checking out stars, and I'll tell my kids, that's a planet, and that's a star, and that's this constellation, and that. And of course, they're bored by it, but I love that stuff.
My kids, I feel like they'd like it at first. There's this thing, oh, cool, and then they'd be over it immediately after that. Yeah. So you could point them out. I know where the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper is, but those are the only ones I know. So like what is it? There's like a bear and like all these other ones.
You got Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. You've got the bear. And actually Big Dipper is a part of Ursa Major, the bear. And you've got Orion, who is chasing the bear, right? Orion the hunter, he's chasing the bear, but behind Orion, you've got Scorpius, the scorpion, who stings Orion. That's part of the mythology, of course, with the constellation. But yeah, you've got the different Pegasus. There's so many out there. Do
you have a planetarium in Georgia?
Yeah,
or Florida?
We have one about 20 minutes, 30 minutes away, right up the highway, and we've been there with the kids and everything. And they've got a planetarium, they've got dinosaurs. It's really, really cool. Small little town, but they've got this cool science museum, oddly enough. And then,
nice.
And also growing up in Florida, I was grew up just south of Cape Canaveral, so I went to Cape Canaveral to NASA to the park and everything there, and went on tours multiple times. Usually that was summer camp. That was part of summer camp, was going to Cape Canaveral and checking out NASA and all that stuff. So
that'd be super cool.
Yeah, and watching the space shuttles. There's the word space shuttles be shot off. We could see them from my hometown.
That's crazy. Were you live when the one exploded, the Challenger?
I watched. I didn't watch it. I saw it out of my 4th grade window. A kid came from a neighboring classroom and said, "Hey, did you guys see it?" And the teacher said, "Oh crap, we forgot." We rolled up the curtains, and there we could just see it as the iconic picture of it just going everywhere. So I didn't actually see it fully explode. And that we spent the rest of the day with the TV and watching the news coverage and writing our feelings down about all that stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah,
You should watch, did you ever watch Cosmos? Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think, is the host of it.
I've seen some of his stuff. Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff.
Yeah, that show's pretty cool if you're into watching stuff like that. Now, let's tell everybody where to find you. Read your phone number and email and website aloud so that anybody that might be listening can jot it down.
So my direct cell phone number is 770-361-5717. You can reach me at andy@fidelissouth.com. And Fidelis, like Semper Fidelis, South, because I'm in the South. So andy@fidelissouth.com, and the website is fidelissouth.com. And again, I invite any agent or veteran to call me, text me, or email me and let me know what questions you have, any help you need with the VA home loan.
Yeah, or if you're moving down there, you're Atlanta? Is that where you are?
Oh, I'm Metro Atlanta, but I'm Northwest Corridor, up 75, out I-20. So
is there a popular suburb or town that you cover?
Yeah, we're a suburb of Atlanta, so like Marietta, Ackworth, Paulding County, Cobb County, Cherokee County, Bartow County, any of that northwest. If you're familiar with Atlanta and you're northwest of Atlanta, that's generally where I cover. And I've covered stuff all over the Metro Atlanta area, working with investors that did rehabs in downtown Atlanta. So I've been a part of a lot of that stuff too. So, but my bread and butter, the basic, residential real estate is in the Northwest Corridor. And then also down in Florida, the Northwest Florida, basically Panama City Beach area, all the way over to the Destin, Fort Walton area. I've done deals in Pensacola, which is, butts up against Alabama and the state line there. But that full area is where I cover. Our goal is to eventually move down there to be closer to the beach. I was born on a beach, so I want to get back there. It's a different beach, but I definitely want to get back there, and that's where our family usually goes to vacation and has our best time.
Awesome. So if you need Andy down there, or you know somebody down there that needs help, or you just have VA loan questions and you're somewhere else, feel free to reach out to Andy. His contact info and links to all his socials and everything will be up or down or in the description wherever you're watching or listening. And you can feel free to contact me if you're buying or selling a home in central Pennsylvania or anywhere in the world. Andy and I have this vast network of realtors and loan officers and real estate professionals all across the globe really now. It's pretty amazing what Clubhouse has done. We won't start geeking out on our Clubhouse mastermind, but it's crazy. If you need anything anywhere, right?
Exactly. No, I mean, if you need any information, you need advice, coaching, mentorship, anything like that, we've got a great group of folks. And I mean, there's probably a few hundred that usually rotate in and out of there quite often, but we've got folks internationally. I mean, we've had people on there from Australia, from Africa, definitely from Europe, the Middle East. I know we've had people on there before, so that's really neat. It's nice to network and network even through this with you. So it's been great.
Yeah, I haven't been stumped yet. So every time somebody in my office, every time I have a referral or somebody in my office, I hear them say, "I need somebody in Timbuktu." I'm like, wait, I will find the perfect person in Timbuktu, and without fail, within 20 minutes, I have the perfect exact person that knows horse farms in Texas, in the exact town that person wanted to go. So it really is. It's no joke. This referral network is awesome.
It is.
So reach out to me. You can call me, text me, email me, just like Andy. And you can also throw a rock with a note through my window or send a carrier pigeon if you want to as well. I don't care how you do it, as long as you reach out. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. Thank you, Andy, for being here. And let's say goodbye to everybody.
All right.
See you, everybody.